Hi, hey Russ here. Welcome back to the shop. Today I want to talk about where I'm going to go with this T-bar system that I built. You know, and you saw me, I use it to mount my mini table on. I also can use it as a hold fast to hold work down to my tabletop workbench. But that's only the beginning of what you'll be able to do with this thing. I'm going to show you where I'm going to go with this next. When I first started my channel, one of the things I talked about was my legacy ornamental mill, and that an overhead router mill is actually something that is really very handy to have in a shop, especially a small shop. So real quick, what is an overhead router mill? It's a CNC machine is an overhead router mill, only it's controlled by a computer. The legacy ornamental mill is an overhead router mill, but it's manually controlled. It's more of a machinist type machine instead of a computer machine. They do exactly the same thing theoretically if you think about it, both of them. Only one controls everything by the computer, and the other one you control everything in the same way a machinist would control it. So that's really kind of, they're all the same thing. With that understood, not everybody wants to learn how to use a CNC machine. Let's just be honest here. I've been in computers for a long time in my career, and could I handle a CNC? Sure. But when I started in my shop retired, one of the things I said to myself is, I don't want to use a computer out here for building things. I want to build them myself. And so that's the defining line, in my opinion, between a CNC machine and a regular overhead router machine. Milling machine. And that's really what this is about. So for those of you that really don't want to do a CNC thing, but you really know that you can get some good control by controlling that router on all three dimensions, the X, Y, and Z axis. And that's really what it's about, is you want to be able to do that, but let's do it by hand controls instead of by using it by computer. That makes it you doing it instead of the computer doing all your work for you. So that's what I'm designing here, is something that can be built in a small shop, but yet, and build it out of common materials, but yet it'll do everything that a CNC machine or a legacy ornamental mill can do. Only it's going to be your own, built out of everything that is easy to find, hopefully. So anyway, I don't know where this is going to end up. This is going to probably be quite a long series, so I'm still doing other videos too. But this is just something that you're going to start seeing a lot of, and it's based on the idea of these two bars and the way they adjust, and that whole system is going to be the base for that router system, that overhead router system. Let me give you a quick idea of what it looks like, so maybe conceptually then you'll see it too. And as I figure out all the little details of what we got to do with, like, how we're going to control all three axes, do we do it with the Incra jig, or which we could do, or do we do it with hand cranks and threaded rod, and every time you crank it one turn it moves it a 1/16 of an inch? There's lots of ways to control it, or maybe even use all of those methods. Where this is going to go, I don't know exactly, but these are things that hopefully you'll also participate in ideas about what you think it should do, and not make it too complicated. That's the main thing, is I don't want to make it so complicated you won't want to build it. Because this is something that I think we can build the rudimentary system to begin with, and then from there we can start building and adding on the enhancements to get it to do more and more and more, and we don't have to take steps back and rebuild something in order to get it to do more. That's part of what makes this evolve into a good system, theoretically. So you could actually build this thing based on, theoretically, my first video as we build this, and if you watch all my videos in series, you should be able to build on what you see in the next one if you want to build your own. And you may even, at some point, take it off on a tangent to have this machine doing something that I hadn't even thought about yet, that you wanted to do very specifically, like because you make pens all the time, or you make bowls all the time, and you go, I could actually make use of this thing doing just that. So you may want to dedicate part of what this thing can do. Basically, I'm going to try to make this thing the Swiss Army knives of routers. And it should be able to do a lot of different things by controlling it. So Anyway, I've kind of rambled on about it. It's just going to be one of those mornings you have to put up with. But let's take a quick look at my concept here of the router, and then you'll get a better idea of what we're doing here. So let me come over here at the end of my workbench. And right here, let me change your angle just a little bit. So right here is my two bars. These are my two bars that can adjust up and down on the end of my workbench. And what I did is I attached two rails to it there to give me a rail system. Now I can set my router up here on its own rail system, and I have a little sled theoretically. I now can control this router on the y-axis and on the z-axis. And this is the idea behind this. And by adjusting the height, I can get my router bit close to where I need it to be, and then final adjustment on the z-axis will be done with a plunge router, just like I do on my Legacy. And so you'll be able to control all three axes when we're done with this router. And all we have to do then is figure out a clamping system to clamp our work to our table also. So this is the whole concept. And no matter how thick the piece of wood that you're going to be working on, milling, it won't matter because you have so much adjustment capability on your table. Because the height of these can be adjusted up and down, that makes this very versatile. I could even, if I wanted to, I could take and put two more of these on the other end of my workbench. So I have four of them, and then I could run these rails from here to there. And then I can set my sled up to slide on those, and I could turn this whole tabletop into an overhead router capability. So I could actually put up large pieces of slabs of wood and slide them through here and go back and forth and mill it with this setup with four of these posts. So you can go off in so many directions with the posts themselves with this overhead router capability because of what this base of these tubes can do. The other thing you can do, if you think about it for just a second, what if I took two of these and mounted them on my lathe so I could bring it up, and I put my router sled on my lathe and control it as I'm turning the piece on the lathe. You're getting awful close, again, to that overhead router mill because the lathe is turning to work for you, doing a lot of the hard work, and then you can control the router on the X, Y, and Z axis right over your workpiece while it's turning. So you can do some pretty good stuff there, too. The lathe would be a good place to have two of these posts. So anyway, these are all things that I'd like to start doing and think about. But my main thing right now is I really want to make an overhead flat milling router. And I'm going to make a small one, probably somewhere that fits within this area. That's the key. So that it'll have a work area for the router of maybe 20 inches by 12 inches, that type of thing. And that's what originally is, so that you can slide your piece in there and lock it down, and you can work within that area. And if you have a larger area you want to do, you can move it down, lock it down, and work on the new area. So because this is all going to be open for your piece to be put in place, you'll be able to move even a large piece underneath here and continue working on it on something that is as long as you want it to be. So the overhead router system here should be pretty versatile. And especially in a small shop, you'll be able to do some pretty good stuff, I think, without having to take up a lot of room or take up permanent room. You don't have to necessarily get to have this thing dedicated to a spot. Like now, if I'm done, if this was my router system, I would have this system here where I can take it off now and go put it up and put it away. Then I take my two rails off, drop these down, and theoretically, in 3 or 4 minutes, I can turn this out of the way and have my full workbench back. So I don't have to dedicate a spot in a small shop to an overhead router with this. That's the idea. The other thing I want to talk about real quick is using this as a flat milling. You also can do center turning. Let me adjust this just a little bit here. So hold on. Getting old, I gotta sit down now and then. This is a sit down morning. Anyway, the other thing you want to talk about is center turning on an overhead router. I just talked about how you can put it right straight on a lathe and instantly turn that into an overhead lathe and do a lot of straight turning that you can do on a legacy mill. Right on there, just by using these two bars and a router. So there's a lot of things you can do with it. But if you don't want to put them on your lathe, you could actually make a setup here on your bar system where you could do center turning. With my Xylus vise, for example, if I turn my bars out, hanging out over the end of my table instead of right over the top itself, I can attach this to the side. And the Xylus has these things here, which you can take and you put them on. And this does center to center turning. So now, if I put this on here, it doesn't work real well. And just like that, this is now set up for turning. And now if my router mill bars were sitting over the top of this, I could actually mill with this. I can mill things on a center turning. Also, the Xylus has the attachment here that a drill goes into so that I could actually turn power and use this and turn it using the drill and be able to do center turnings on there and do some pretty elaborate stuff right on this without even owning a lathe. This could be do a lot of your stuff that you normally might want to think about doing on the lathe. So there's a lot of potential here between that and whether you buy a Xylus vise or whether you make these pieces yourself. You can make little stands real easy to turn something center to center on here right on top of your workbench even. You don't have to turn it around and hang over. So there's lots and lots of things you can do with this whole thing when you get done, when you think about it. So I'm pretty excited about where this is going to go with this bar system. I wanted to share with you what my idea was here. And this is still only one of a couple of different projects I want to do over the next year or two. This is probably going to be a long-term project, and there'll be lots of other videos besides this as we go along. And I'll show you some of the tricks of how I figured out how to do these things as we go along. So hopefully we'll both learn some things as we go along here and figure this stuff out. Especially if we think outside the box as we're doing it. So as you can see, I'm hopeful that this is going to be an exciting project, but we'll see. It could end up being a failure, and I could end up in the end not having anybody even watch this thing before I get it done, but that's okay. I think it can be useful to the small shop, so that's why I'm doing it. I think it'll be fun. I have a couple other ideas for a small shop that I also want to do, just so you know. Besides my miter station that I want to build and get that all set up nicely, I have another problem in the shop that I know a lot of guys have, a lot of people have, not just guys, sorry. A lot of people have, and that is you don't have any water in the shop. Now, my house is only 7 feet away, so access to water and other things is not so bad. But my problem that I have out here, what I really miss about no water in the shop, is being able to rinse things and wash things off real quick and easy. So I'm thinking that I'm going to get into a project that'll probably take a couple of videos, and I'm going to build something that's very simple, that you can have water there so that you can actually have a quick way to rinse off things and clean things off, and have a drain bucket on it, and an easy way to add water to it and that type of thing, so that you have this I think it's probably going to be a cabinet, but we'll see. But some kind of facility so that I actually have water in here for cleanup. That's the one thing I miss the most about not having plumbing in this shop, is to do that cleanup stuff, that little washing. So that's a project I'm going to do that I think will probably most people, hopefully in the small shop, will look at and say, yeah, I could use that. And you could even keep something like that. If I do it right, you can keep it small enough. You can keep it in what I call a heat closet, where you just have a closet built with lights in it. And that's where you keep your critical things that you don't want to freeze if your shop is not heated year round like mine is. In fact, I've just been experimenting this year with a heat closet on a cabinet over there. I've lined it with just simple cardboard and puts a couple lights in there, and I monitored the temperature of it. And I've got a video coming out on that here soon. I'm going to put that together so you can see what a heated closet can be, how easy it is to set one up in your shop. So if you have an unheated shop, you can still keep the critical things from freezing in it. Anyway, these are all things that we're going to do. But I wanted to make sure more than anything that you knew where I was going with this new post base system. I think it's going to be awesome, and it's going to actually really take on a life of its own, quite honestly, as you can tell. So if you want to watch this as I go through it, great. If you have comments, please, I'd love to hear them. Always looking for new ideas, and most of the time I actually get them from you guys, so I do appreciate that. So thanks for your help. Thanks for stopping by. If you like this video, say so. Most importantly, though, come back again, because as you can see, I'm nowhere near done. Thanks. We'll see you again soon.